The final Truth and Reconciliation report is out. The 94 wide-ranging recommendations were tabled 5 months ago, but they are getting new life under Liberal rule.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission has finished its mandate. The hope of our commission for reconciliation in the future is that we as adults can make a commitment to the children of the future, our children, our grandchildren, and their grandchildren, that we will do what we can today to make their world of tomorrow a better place.
The Government of Canada sincerely apologizes and asks the forgiveness of the Aboriginal peoples of this country for failing them so profoundly. At the same time, today, there is reason for hope. No relationship is more important to me and to Canada than the one with First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples. Let me say it once again. I give you my word that we will renew and respect that relationship.
Very emotional Prime Minister. Okay, the government has already put into motion an inquiry into murdered and missing Aboriginal women and girls, but there are plenty of other calls to action in the final report. They want to repeal the Criminal Code Section 43 that allows use of force to correct children, that so-called spanking law. They want to enact an Aboriginal Languages Act, establish a National Council for Reconciliation. The Pope should apologize to survivors, their families, and communities. A national statutory holiday should be established for truth and reconciliation. And they want to add the phrase to the oath of citizenship to include that we will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including treaties with Indigenous peoples. Well, let's get reaction to this defining document. Residential schools history that the Cult Commission describes as a cultural genocide. A national disgrace is born out of education really cannot be reconciled, some would argue, without elevating education standards on reserve to off-reserve standards. Our Indigenous Affairs Minister will be joining us live in minutes, but let's first bring in Roberta Jamieson. She's arguably Canada's best-known advocate for enhanced education on First Nations. That's the fast track to a more hopeful future. The President and CEO of Inspire joins me live. Roberta Jamieson, what do you see in this report that gives you hope for a better future for the kids these days?
Well, I think the essential message, Don, is it's not called truth and reconciliation by chance. I think we've heard the truth, and now we have to move on to reconciliation. And quite appropriately, Justice Sinclair has issued calls to action. And I am a very action-oriented individual, as I think you know. And
I do.
I want to see every young Indigenous student who is in primary school today graduate from high school and go on to post-secondary education. And they won't do it without support, without curriculum that validates who they are as Indigenous people. And that's really what I'm focused on.
Yeah, and right now there's a huge cost imbalance, or certainly a spending imbalance between people on students on First Nations and those in sort of the regular school system. That's got to, I assume that's what you're arguing has to be remedied very quickly. We
need to close that gap. It's not by accident that only 4 out of 10 First Nations children graduate from high school versus 8 out of 10 Canadian children, otherwise non-Indigenous. And that has everything to do with under-funded schools, teachers that need tools to work with, and support for our students when they get into college and university.
How do you make school more attractive to students on First Nations? Like, there's huge absenteeism rates. As you point out, the dropout rate is horrendous. What needs to be added? I mean, you can throw a lot of money at it, but don't you have to have a greater sort of cultural compatibility, if you will, with these students?
Absolutely. Our students need to see themselves in the curriculum. They need to see that their stories are being told. They need to see that cultural values that we hold are in the sciences, are in the maths. And you know, there are educators out there working very hard There are resources. This is achievable. I'm here to tell Canadians we can change this picture, and we can do it in this generation if we get taking some serious steps. And that's what Inspire does. We support educators in the classroom. We support students in university. And Justice Sinclair called for greater numbers of our students to graduate from post-secondary because they are the change agents in our communities. And I'm very proud that this last year we supported 5,000 bursaries to students, but you know what, Don? We're only meeting 16% of the need. So there are students out there who can change life for their communities and the country if they are supported.
I know we've had a lot of reports that have sounded very good, like the Kelowna Accord, for example, under Paul Martin, dealt with education in a big way, multi-billion-dollar commitments, and it fizzled under the Stephen Harper government. They made a lot of noise. They were going to correct it. Not much has happened to improve the situation. What makes you think now is any different? What do you think we've actually reached a tipping point of some kind here?
Yes, I do. I think that Canadians, as never before, are galvanized around wanting to create change. And it's governments, it's our own leadership in our Indigenous communities, it's corporate Canada, it's individual Canadians. I meet Canadians every day who really want to make a difference. They want to change the picture in the future. They have heard about the past, they've heard the painful truths, and they want to move forward, and they want to be part of that picture.
Roberta Jamieson, you know, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. You're one of the most articulate and coherent people we have on this show, and we thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Don.